There's a quote from the Bible that says, "A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit." And when it comes to any form of activism, this is a truism. By their fruits, you shall know them. Now, you can't simply define something however you want to, define it into existence, regardless of the evidence to the contrary. And I ask you now, what has wokeness, what we know of as wokeness now in 2022, what has it given us besides division, suspicion, anger, hate, chaos? When it comes to the actual definition of wokeness these days, look, you can't divorce it. It's inexorably entwined with critical theory, with Marxism. It presents a warped and inaccurate concept of history, all in order to bring about this concept of equity, something I regard as genuinely evil, because it requires forced discrimination, not only to implement but to maintain going forward. It's not the natural state of things. All people may be equal under the law, but not all people are born equal. What does that mean for entertainment? Well, entertainment in the last decade or so, it has become a hollowed out husk, a hollowed out husk of identity politics, just a shadow of its former glory, pandering, tokenism, re envisioned tripe made purely without art, all for representation's sake. Why am I talking about this, and why do I have the Sandman image up in front of me here? Well, it's because I'm reading this brilliant article. Again, another brilliant article from Bounding into Comics. This one's written by Spencer Bachuli. And it says the Sandman creator Neil Gaiman misses the point while responding to accusations he went woke with a Netflix series. Um, yeah, he spoke in a video thing. You can go see it on Twitter, where he's articulating his thoughts about this, and it just goes to show how either ignorant or out of touch with reality Neil Gaiman has become. Let's jump into it here. Missing the point of fans' various criticisms against Netflix's live action adaptation of his seminal comic book series, Neil Gaiman has responded to accusations that he went woke with its production by pointing to the fact that the original books he wrote 35 years ago were woke. How can he say that, you wonder? Woke wasn't really a thing. I mean, some people like to say that woke was a word being used 100 years ago to describe simply being aware of the plight of Black people in America. Maybe that's true. I don't know. We're talking about what it is and more importantly, what it does and what it means today. So, yeah, this is why I think Neil Gaiman has completely lost the plot. But let's get into what the hell he's talking about here. Gaiman offered his thoughts on the pushbacks to his as inclusive as possible production philosophy for Netflix's Sandman during a recent interview. Here's his Times Radio. You can go watch that yourself. He says, when people are accusing me of being quote unquote woke for Sandman, stuff that I wrote 35 years ago, it's like, yes, I remember when they called it politically correct. He then continued, and then you would talk about politically correctness gone mad. He goes on to say, well, he likes to think about it. Well, actually, I'll let him get into it here. I'll let him get into it. One sec. Here it is. And I remember once reading a book where they started talking about political correctness and the fact that you could no longer make jokes about people's ethnicities or religion in the same way. And I thought, well, actually, that's not political correctness. That's just treating other people with respect. So he goes on to say, with regards to political correctness gone mad, I just think of it as, oh, that's treating with other people with respect gone mad. Let's see, does he get into it even more here? Yeah, that's exactly what he says here. And I would love to just sort of have a thing on my computer that substitute the word woke whenever it turns up with just treating other people with respect. Well, I mean, this is to me, which is it's such a shame to see because when I first thought that I wanted to become a writer, I read all of Neil Gaiman's things. I was a big fan. It's sad to see an author of his caliber just completely miss the point, completely ignore the realities of the situation of what political correctness is, to argue that political correctness is not being able to say a racy joke here and there, is to use the Mott and Bailey argument, which means to argue the easy point and ignore the hard stuff. And just like I said earlier, define the issue away with a semantic definition. Look, political correctness, this is what it is. Political correctness is not being able to tell the truth when the truth is desperately what we need to hear. It's telling a lie in order not to offend people who desperately need to be offended. Political correctness leads to tyranny and has literally gotten people killed. It stops terrorist activity from being reported. It's let rapists, gangbangers, human traffickers go free because they are of a certain minority. It's how you describe months of fiery riots where people die and billions of dollars of damage. It gets done as a mostly peaceful protest. It's how currently today you're getting the mutilation and sterilization of children celebrated as empowering. This idea that it's just, oh, we're being nice and respectful to each other is complete rubbish. It's less about politeness than putting a shiny coat of paint over a building that's being slowly eaten from the inside out by termites. That's what political correctness is, Neil Gaiman. So for you to say it's just, oh, it's this airy fairy idea of respect, just just shows me again how out of touch you've become. He goes on to say, now this is the real point of why I think woke stories fail, why they're not real art, why they fail to capture people's passions and imaginations, and why when you go woke, you're not really making art anymore. New art isn't being created. All you're doing is bastardizing pre-existing art. So let me get into it here. He says, it's the idea of escapism and the fact that you have given people with a book something to escape to. You've given them people who they know. Now that writer there, I can identify with. That's what I want to see. That, however, is not what woke is, or not what woke creates. He goes on to say, I get adults, particularly women, coming up to me saying, I read Caroline as a girl. It got me through some really hard times. Caroline is a person who may never have existed in reality, but she existed in their heads. She was real in their heads. I gave them very literally an escape, perhaps in some cases gave them tools to fight back, ways not to be afraid when they'd finished escaping, when they'd return from the book. And that's very real. Do you see where this is going? Do you see where it's going? Here's the author of the article. As noted above, Gaiman's rebuttal misses the core of the issue these accusations of woke were founded upon. The core issue of fans was not that the original series, we're talking about Sandman here, was progressive or respectable in terms of its treatment of various characters, but rather that the author had given in to trends of race and gender swapping in casting the long-awaited adaptation of his beloved series. If something is real to a fan, it seems to reason that they would not take kindly to having the image that has been painted for them for years, roughly 33, in the case of Sandman, forcefully drawn over by controversial modern mindsets. That is the crux of it. Now, Sandman has a lot of issues with the whole gay representation thing. I did a whole video on that. To do a quick recap on that, essentially, every second or third character is gay. And even if you aren't aware, even if you don't have this connection to the Sandman characters, you can't achieve escapism in the Sandman adaptation because it's got this absurd statistical impossibility present in the show. So it's like Sandman, it's not set in a gay bar, but it's got gay bar levels of representation in it. The viewer as the viewer, you're left to draw the conclusion, oh, well, I guess in the world of 7 billion or so people, there's about 5 billion are gay. That's about right. And that's never explained. It's never presented as anything out of the ordinary. So you're just, oh, that's odd. And when I did these videos on it, a lot of people hit back and said, hey, it's a fantasy. Why are you, it's not supposed to be real. Why are you even worried about it? To which I answer, well, okay, then if it's not supposed to be real, why the need for increased representation of modern race, of minority races and sexualities? For suspension of disbelief to take place, you have to have a baseline in the world that we can understand and relate to. I always say, like, okay, imagine a story where every time a character is really aggressive against another character, the response is to, oh, let's all laugh and sing and hug, as opposed to some sort of retaliation there. Or something a bit more visual. Imagine a story, imagine a TV show where every second character is walking around on crutches with a cast on their leg. It's never mentioned, it's never brought up. It's just that's what it is. Now, I think in that case, audiences would be well within their rights to criticize. This is an extreme deviation for what we know as the realities of life as a human being. But the moment it's sort of more woke topics, sexualities, racial representations, and stuff like that, uh, such as in Sandman, absurd levels of gay characters, high numbers of race swaps. All of a sudden, if you bring this up, you're a homophobe, you're a racist. These criticisms are off limit. But heading back to the real issue here, this is the ultimate. What has happened in shows like Sandman, what happens in all kinds of woke shows, is the ultimate sin of storytelling. The problem is these woke characters aren't real. If you say to a fan who was like, I loved Death, she was my character for 30 years, and then you say, well, she's black now. All of a sudden, Death wasn't a real character, wasn't a real person. It was just an avatar that you could swap out. I mean, the character that that person has come to connect with goes away, disappears, not real anymore, because you can just swap out characteristics because of the trend du jour. Easy peasy. Woke characters aren't real. At best, they're an avatar intended to represent an entire demographic. Good luck with that. Creating someone who's flawed and nuanced and subtle and real. You're going to offend everyone if they do something bad. And then if they are just perfect people, then that's the bigotry of low expectations. So yeah, at best, they're an avatar. At worst, they're just mouthpieces for activist writers to just get on their soapbox and spout their activism. This is why they don't work. This is why Sandman 2 probably hasn't been renewed for a second season. It's not because, as Neil Gaiman says, the fans just watched it wrong. It's complicated, he says. A lot of people weren't binge watching it. They were spreading out their viewing. They were like, oh, I guess I'll watch. I mean, I didn't really like the first couple of episodes. I guess I'll watch it, a couple of weeks later or whatever, when nothing else really on. So yeah, fans, you watched it wrong. That's why Netflix hasn't uh hasn't renewed it for a second season. Not because of the fact that you completely missed the point with any of the criticisms, or you seem to have forgotten the point of storytelling, that characters are supposed to feel real. We want to identify with them. We want to have some kind of connection to them, and you can't connect to an avatar of a demographic. A token representation. That's not how storytelling works. That's not compelling. That's not art. If you do want some art, if you are looking for some art, have you considered The Lucent Waking Dream? Do you like stories that bend reality, twist dreams and reality into strange and interesting new ways with characters that are real? Here's a character, Ella Forsyth. She has red hair. She's a white British woman, English woman. I can't change that. I can't change that because that's who she is. That's who she is as a person. Can't just ginger side her into a progressive black lesbian. It's not going to work. It's not the same person. All the fans who had an attachment to Ella Forsyth, that attachment is gone. This is not how you tell stories, everyone. People, if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, consider subscribing, please consider becoming a member, because you are helping to pay for the creation of new Lucent comics as we speak. All right, that's it from me. I will see you next time. Bye.